October 14th, 2042. At 3:17 UTC, every seismic sensor on Kronos station activated simultaneously. Not in sequence, not gradually, all at once. For a fraction of a second, the entire station trembled with the same frequency moving through the ice beneath Mimas. Then the lights failed. Emergency systems flooded the corridors in red as artificial gravity flickered in and out. Loose equipment drifted upward. A wrench spun silently through the command deck before slamming into a monitor. Commander Elias Mercer grabbed the console beside him. Control, we just lost stabilization. Static cracked through the transmission to Earth. Outside the observation window, Saturn filled half the sky. And below it, the surface of Mimas was opening. Not exploding, opening. A fracture nearly 80 kilometers long had appeared across the moon's crust, glowing faintly blue from beneath the ice. At first, the crew thought they were witnessing a cryovolcanic event, something violent, but understood. Then, the thermal readings arrived. The temperature beneath Herschel crater had increased by 31 degrees in less than 4 minutes. That was impossible. Frozen moons do not change temperature that quickly unless enormous energy is being released underground. And Mimas was never supposed to contain that much energy. For decades, scientists believed Mimas was one of the most geologically inactive objects in the solar system. A frozen moon orbiting Saturn at more than 1 billion kilometers from Earth. Small, scarred, mostly ignored. The only reason most people remembered it at all was because its massive Herschel crater made it resemble the Death Star from Star Wars. But in the 2020s, data from the Cassini-Huygens mission revealed something strange. Mimas was wobbling. Not visibly, not enough for cameras to detect, but enough for orbital calculations to notice tiny irregularities in the moon's rotation. Initially, researchers blamed measurement error. Small moons behave unpredictably all the time, but the anomaly refused to disappear. Each orbit produced the same deviation. That suggested something beneath the crust was moving independently from the surface above it. An internal ocean became the leading theory, which created a much larger problem. If liquid water existed beneath Mimas, then the moon was not dead. Something inside it was still generating heat. The discovery reshaped planetary science almost overnight. Until then, moons like Europa and Enceladus had dominated the search for extraterrestrial life because they showed obvious signs of activity: geysers, fractures, subsurface chemistry. Mimas showed almost nothing, which meant an entire ocean had remained hidden beneath one of the most ordinary-looking moons in the solar system. And if scientists missed an ocean there, what else had humanity overlooked? That question led to the Kronos mission. Officially called the Kronos Subsurface Oceanographic Array, it was the largest multinational deep space research project ever attempted. Construction took 11 years, 3 rotating habitation rings, 2 nuclear-powered drilling platforms, a permanent orbital laboratory. The mission objectives sounded straightforward: confirm the ocean, analyze the chemistry, search for microbial life. But privately, many researchers feared something else: not aliens, instability. Models suggested the ice shell around Herschel crater had been under tidal stress for millions of years. Saturn's gravity stretched Mimas continuously during orbit, generating internal friction deep beneath the crust. The effect was subtle. But over geological time, subtle forces become catastrophic. Dr. Lena Volkov warned mission planners about that before launch. Her simulations predicted pockets of superheated water trapped beneath unstable pressure zones near the crater basin. If drilling operations weakened those regions further, sections of the crust could collapse inward. The risk assessment was reviewed, then downgraded. The mission continued, because by 2042, the pressure to discover extraterrestrial life had become political as much as scientific. No nation wanted to be left behind. The first months on Kronos station felt almost peaceful. Crew journals described the view of Saturn as hypnotic. Astronauts spent hours in the observation dome watching storms move across the planet's atmosphere while sunlight reflected off the rings like shattered glass. Systems engineer Marcus Hale wrote that Mimas felt less like a moon and more like a frozen memory drifting around a gas giant. The station settled into routine quickly, until the seismic pulses began. Every 47 minutes, sensors beneath drill platform 2 recorded the same vibration pattern emerging from below the ice. Not random tremors, a repeating harmonic frequency. At first, the pulses were weak enough to dismiss as mechanical resonance caused by the drilling equipment itself. Then they intensified. The vibrations began appearing even while the drills were inactive. That changed everything. Dr. Volkov isolated the waveform and compared it against natural tectonic activity observed on Earth, Mars, and Europa. Nothing matched. Natural seismic systems fluctuate chaotically, these pulses repeated with near-perfect timing, almost like a signal. Mission logs show the crew became visibly unsettled after that discovery, not because they believed something intelligent existed beneath Mimas, but because nature rarely behaves with machine-like precision, especially inside a frozen moon. Then came the thermal spike. At 1942 station time, deep-core sensors detected a sudden heat bloom beneath Herschel crater, extending nearly 12 kilometers across. The temperature increase lasted only 90 seconds before stabilizing again. But during that minute and a half, sections of the ice shell expanded measurably. Mimas was flexing. Inside mission control on Earth, arguments began immediately. Suspend drilling, continue operations, reduce reactor output, evacuate personnel. Communication delays between Earth and Saturn complicated every decision. Messages required over 70 minutes one way. By the time instructions reached Kronos Station, conditions had already changed. Commander Mercer ultimately chose to continue drilling. The decision would later define the entire disaster investigation. October 11th. Drill Platform 2 breached the lower ice boundary at a depth of 32 kilometers. The camera descended into darkness beneath the crust. Then the floodlights illuminated open water. An ocean stretched below the station. Black. Vast. Moving beneath the ice ceiling like a living landscape. The discovery should have been one of the greatest moments in human history. Instead, it lasted 14 seconds. The probe's lights suddenly distorted as interference spread across the video feed. Pressure readings spiked beyond expected limits. Salinity levels fluctuated wildly. Then the sonar returned an object. Large. Mobile. The onboard AI attempted to classify it 3 separate times. Each attempt failed. The object moved outside sensor range seconds later, and then the transmission ended. Not gradually. Instantly. As though the probe had been erased from existence. No debris was ever recovered. Inside Kronos Station, morale collapsed. Crew members stopped treating the mission as exploration and started treating it as survival. Several requested emergency departure authorization from Earth. One astronaut privately recorded concerns that pressure fluctuations beneath the crater were increasing after each drilling cycle. Another reported hearing metallic vibrations through the station hull during sleep periods, despite no external activity. Then the fractures appeared. Tiny at first. Hairline cracks spreading across the ice plains near Herschel crater. Orbital drones confirmed the fractures were widening several centimeters every hour. Mimas was destabilizing faster than predicted. By October 14th, evacuation planning had already begun, but it was too late. At 3:17 UTC, the crust beneath Drill Platform 2 collapsed inward. The force released from below the surface exceeded every disaster model ever developed for the mission. A plume of water, vapor, ice, methane, and rock erupted into orbit at nearly 11,000 kilometers per hour. Fragments struck Kronos Station seconds later. One impact tore through Habitat Ring B instantly. Atmosphere vented into space in a white torrent as crew members were pulled against emergency bulkheads. Artificial gravity failed completely. Commander Mercer activated rotational stabilization manually while debris alarms screamed across the command deck. Outside the station, the surface of Mimas continued splitting apart. Not randomly. The fractures spread in branching geometric patterns radiating outward from Herschel crater, as if the moon's crust had been weakened long before humanity arrived. Then another transmission reached the station from Drill Platform 2. Even though the platform had already been destroyed, audio only, distorted. But investigators later confirmed a voice existed beneath the static. No member of the crew was ever identified as the speaker. The message lasted 6 seconds, then ended with a sound investigators could never explain. Not mechanical, not geological. Something closer to a deep resonant vibration moving through water. During the chaos, Marcus Hale entered the reactor containment chamber manually to stabilize station power for the evacuation launches. Internal temperatures exceeded 80 degrees Celsius. Radiation exposure climbed past lethal thresholds within minutes. Still, he kept the systems online long enough for 6 escape vehicles to separate successfully from the station. The last internal camera footage shows Hale looking through the reactor observation glass towards Saturn moments before containment failed. He never attempted evacuation. Back on Earth, the disaster triggered immediate political fallout. Investigations revealed multiple internal reports warning that subsurface pressure beneath Herschel crater was increasing unpredictably weeks before the collapse. Those reports never reached the full crew. Executives feared delaying the mission would destroy public support and funding. So drilling continued, even after the pulses intensified, even after the thermal spikes, even after the unexplained sonar contact. Humanity saw the warning signs and chose progress anyway. Months later, surviving satellites captured the transformed surface of Mimas. The moon no longer resembled the frozen object humanity once studied from afar. Gigantic fissures stretched across entire hemispheres. Cryovolcanic plumes continued venting into space. Thermal activity beneath the crust remained active long after the collapse. But the most disturbing discovery came later. 3 separate probes sent near the fracture zone detected the same 47-minute seismic pulse still repeating beneath the ice. Perfectly consistent. Unchanged. As if whatever caused the signal had survived the catastrophe completely untouched. Today, fragments of chronostation still orbit Mimas beneath Saturn's shadow. Frozen debris circling a moon humanity no longer fully understands. And maybe the most unsettling part of this story is not the disaster itself. It is the possibility that Mimas was never truly dormant, only sealed, waiting beneath kilometers of ice while humanity mistook silence for safety. Because the deeper we travel into the solar system, the more we discover worlds that appear dead on the surface, while something underneath is still awake.